As a girl, she grew up in the remote Canadian mining town Noranda in Quebec. Her mother taught her to love mathematics, her father engineering. Her work has fundamentally shaped modern geotechnics, particularly in applying probabilistic and risk-based methods to geotechnical problems. Even though she has long passed the age for retirement, Suzanne's calendar is fully booked. In today's episode of NGI's podcast, NGI Technical, I, Lars Andresen, has the great honor to host this podcast. Suzanne Lacasse, you were my predecessor as NGI's CEO, and we have worked together for many years. Today, we will dive into your journey, how your work has shaped how we approach complex geotechnical challenges, your profound impact on NGI, and how you are a trailblazer for women in engineering. Welcome.
Thank you.
So, first question, Suzanne. Who was Pilou?
Pilou was a pet. She was a wolf that we adopted. She was raised by our cat and our dog, and we loved her very much. And she just behaved like a wolf, except that we had her as a baby, so she was ours.
This was a real wolf?
This was a real wolf. Okay. The blue eyes and
taken out from the woods,
howling to the moon every night. And yes, but because she drank milk from a mother cat and was raised by the dog, she never knew she was a wolf.
Never knew that she was a wolf.
No.
Okay, you grew up in Noranda, a quite remote town, small town, I guess. Can you give us a description of how your upbringing in Noranda was?
Well, it was like, I guess, most people. It was a small town, harsh winters, very cold, skiing all the time. It was family life the most important, and going to school was the second most important. I was the first girl after several brothers in my family, so I was teased. We played a lot. There were Olympic Games every day in the summer, so we just had lots of fun. It was a lovely childhood.
So it was proper winter in Noranda, so you were prepared when you came to Norway.
Norway was like being in the south.
Yes. How do you think your upbringing has formed you, like your professional you, or?
It was a very stable family life, and it was important to study. I think it was very beneficial, and because in a mining towns are a bit rough. At least they were in the 40s and 50s. So it was very important for my mother that we would study and would be good in school so that we could go somewhere else to do advanced studies. So I think it was a very good formation because we were lots of children, the old-fashioned French-Canadian families. Everybody has his task. And so it was a very disciplined environment, let's say.
So were you competing with your older brothers?
Oh, yeah, that was a big problem. My brothers could read and I could not. They could run faster. So that certainly created an ambition in me that I wanted to be as good as them. And so I played hockey with them and I wanted to be as good and as fast as them. So yes, that was part of the formation too.
I think initially you didn't go directly into engineering. What were your educational plans from the beginning?
Yeah, I guess there was no plan except I loved going to school. The best day of my life in my childhood was the first day I went to school when I was 5 years old. When I was also quite young. The old-fashioned school where first grade are together with a fourth grade, then you could advance quickly. So I was very young coming out of high school, and you could go into engineering then. But my father, an engineer himself, he was working for a contractor. He said, why don't you try something a bit more feminine? Just to try, see if you like it. And then I won't oppose you go to engineering. I think there was one girl that had graduated in engineering in Montreal at that time. And so I chose Bachelor of Arts in Literature, which was very, very, very interesting. Doing philosophy and all those things which are kind of abstract. But it was very good. You learn to speak and write English and French and other languages that you choose. And my father's strategy didn't really work because I loved it there. But I decided, no, I still want to try engineering. So I went to engineering after finishing the 4 years at the university there.
So you did first a bachelor in arts and then...
Arts. It's called Bachelor in Arts and Philosophy. So
I know you are quite interested in literature and reads a lot. So was that where it come from, or?
No, that's from my mother. She was reading everything, and I was reading all the time too.
From the
very
beginning.
The Olympics with my brothers.
So when you then started pursuing a career in engineering, afterwards specialized in geotechnics, what was your inspiration to go in that direction?
Oh, it's my father. He would take every child, not together, one at a time, on his construction jobs, and we would see all the machinery working, and I would work with him on dams. The security was not like today, you could just go. And I saw all the asphalt. His specialty was asphalt. And the work just fascinated me, and the calculations he had to do to it. And he worked all the time too. He worked at home too. So
as you.
Yeah. And seeing him working, I wanted to do the same thing. But Mark, that he's done that with every child, but I'm the only one who became an engineer. The others went to study something else, like medical.
But was he in geotechnics, or?
He especially built roads all his life, working for a contractor. So he was in practice. Yeah. So.
You have had a remarkable career spanning decades. Could you share a defining moment that you believe set the course for your professional journey?
I guess it's many defining moments. I think first going to École Polytechnique in Montreal and then going to MIT, they were all very important to my future development. But I think I have to say, the most defining moment was coming to NGI. If you remember, maybe you don't remember, you were not here then, but
I was not here.
I was supposed to be here just 1 year. So, and then I loved it so much. And I think staying at NGI was what shaped my future career, although the schools before were good.
So in Montreal, was the teaching in French?
Yes, École Polytechnique, it's called. Yeah.
So all the teaching there and books was
French.
They were French.
Yeah.
How has it been to be a woman in a predominantly male-dominated field during your early years? Things have improved, but I guess
that's a question I'm often asked. And honestly, I didn't even notice there was a difference. And I think that's because the education at home with all the big boys and me, and we all had our tasks, we were equal. So I never really realized there was a difference. I was essentially alone in most of my classes. I was teased nicely, just like my brothers did. We went out to drink beer. Although I don't like beer, but we went.
You went out.
And we were good friends, and they took good care of me. Like when I was sick, I was in the hospital for a short period, and then they used carbon paper and made notes for me. So I was away for more than a month, and I could catch up. I mean, they treated me very well. So I didn't really saw a difference. And the only thing I thought is it was an advantage, because being the only girl in civil engineering, I was remembered everywhere I went. And when there were prizes and things, I was also favored, although there were some boys in the class who were as good and as deserving. So it was an advantage.
Yeah, it was. So you you described coming to NGI as a defining moment. So what brought you to Norway and NGI?
Yeah, NGI's name is just like magic. In Polytechnic, engineering is 5 years. And in the third year, you choose to go to, I went to civil. The first lecture in geotechnical engineering, they have it at the undergraduate in Montreal. The professor said, if you have the chance to visit NGI someday, and he was showing pictures of quicklay and such, you should go. And I'm a nerd. I remember everything. So as soon as I could have a sabbatical, then I applied to come to NGI. So
when was this?
I applied in 1977, and I came in 1978. So it's amazing what a professor says can influence a career.
But so you were, as you said, your plan was to stay for 1 year, but you ended up staying a lot more. So how did that happen?
It's it's complex to explain, but I was in academia, and I thought my career would be academia, and I would stay teaching. I would stay at MIT because it was a good place to be. When I came to NGI, I discovered teamwork. University is great. The environment is great. You have lots of companionship, but it's an individualist environment, at least the ones where I went. I was teaching first in Montreal, then I became a professor at MIT. And then when I saw how the projects were solved at NGI, it was just suited me very well. So I went, in those days, you can't take a sabbatical and just leave. I went back to give my courses for 3 years, and then I came to NGI permanently. But it was the way the projects were run and how the people connected with me. We were much more, the old family principle than in academia. There's nothing wrong with academia. I missed the teaching all my life, but MIT was better suited to me, I guess.
NGI was.
Oh, sorry. NGI, sorry.
That's okay. So you were NGI CEO from 1991 to 2012. And during these years, you expanded NGI's international reputation and collaboration in many directions. Could you say a little bit more on why you focused on reinforcing NGI's international reputation?
Yeah, but I see my 20 years as a bit differently. When I started as director of NGI, it was the start of IT and using computers and such. I think I concentrated my first 7 or 8 years, mainly on the internal NGI, establishing system for quality assurance, establishing leadership definitions and a leader group of a certain size, and personnel. We didn't have any head of personnel when I took over. We had a geologist being head of personnel. Then archives was a big problem. Engineers are not good at archiving. I know I am not. And so there was a lot of internal things to do. And also NGI had difficulty earning money. So a lot of it was concentrated stabilizing NGI financially, and then the clients. I remember my first 7 or 8 years is trying to get money from the Research Council of Norway and talking with all those partners that we have and making an alliance with Multiconsult and with the Building Institute in those days. So, and then when NGI was nice and solid and we were earning money, sorry to talk about money, but the international contacts came by themselves. Being director of NGI and I being a foreigner, and I gradually got invited to give keynote lectures and things. So and then from that came more and more projects. So and it's true that NGI. I'm not sure we're expanding because NGI is kind of kept 35-40% export all the time. But because NGI was growing, I guess we doubled in size or so. We had to get more jobs. And then, yes, I spent quite a bit of time in trying to acquiring those jobs. And then when we established NGI in Houston, naturally that was a boost internationally to getting us known. But NGI had a good international reputation from
That's
let's
why
say,
you came. So.
from 1955 or so. So maybe I spent more time trying to get paying jobs rather than just having
because
cooperation.
NGI been through downsizing.
We had
you
from 88 to 90. Yeah, we downsized a bit, so we were maybe 110 or 120 but it's part of the normal life of an organization. The oil price went down too, so that was hard. So yes, international was a feature of what I tried to push on, but I find that my greatest work was trying to organize an NGI internally. You probably don't remember, but NGI adopted Windows in 1995. Not before
remember
that.
Yeah. I came in 94.
Yeah.
So I remember we didn't have Windows in the first year.
So there was we will come back to that later, but there are big changes now. But there were big changes then. It was just a few years ago, before I took over, we were filling timesheets. So there was a internal organization work to be done. Yeah. I enjoyed it. That's it. But,
yes, me too. That's necessary but important part of job of the CEO. So with advancements that we see in enabling technologies and also the societal changes around us, like climate change challenges, how do you see the role of geotechnical engineering in the coming decades?
Oh, it has changed so much, and I'm so impressed how the young people tackle it. When I came out of engineering in 67 or so, the most important thing I had to do was to show that I get an answer, a safety factor of 1.5, 2 lines underneath, and it was correct. And I didn't even think of what that meant for whether it would cause some problem downstream or anything. And today, we have to think in a much more global way, we have to see all the consequences of what we do. And it took me a while to adapt to that, some years. But I guess going in risk helped me evolve. But I'm very impressed how the modern geotechnical engineer can tackle that complexity and is open to uncertainties. This morning I had a session for risk analysis for Moss with our young people to train. And, they're 25 years old and they understand the fact that, if it fails, it will cause so much damage. But if it just part of it fails because we have a 3-dimensional effect, then we have other consequences. And they tackle this uncertainty much better. So I think this part of, you mentioned climate change, and that we have to include in the analysis. They've become so much more flexible into including that in the analysis, not just being the engineer I was, just having an answer, a number, and that's the final point, and here's the report.
So, I was the same engineer many, many years.
Yeah, so it happened from 2000 onward, and it's getting better. But you see with the profile, the people we have hired, we have many, many more people that are, I wouldn't say environmentalists, but engineering, preoccupied with having a better environment and sustainable solutions and all that. I think it was necessary, but it's difficult to relate to when we started in engineering.
Yeah, I agree. But it fits then that NGI has this societal mission of really contributing for the society to be on safe ground.
Yeah, that's right.
That's important.
So the safe ground is in all manners safe, not just not just safe in factor safety,
financially,
but yeah.
How important has this aspect of sustainable development been for your work or you personally?
Well, it's my work right now is very much trying to reduce uncertainties or reduce risks, so therefore reduce uncertainties. And for me, that's also part of being sustainable. That is part of providing solutions that will cost less money and will keep the population safe. As you know, I work a lot with dams, and that we have aging dams, so we have to ensure safety for the population. We have to ensure it's a sustainable source of energy. So yes, I think it's become it's an integral part of geotechnical engineering, and now it's an integral part of my job.
Yep. You have been a pioneer in integrating probabilistic methods in geotechnical engineering. So what inspired you to go in that direction, and how has it changed the field?
Well, other people should answer the last part of that question. But honestly, Lars, I've been very lucky in life. My career is a succession of opportunities or coincidences or being maybe the right person at the right time. There was never any plan of me. There was a hope of me coming to NGI, that I will admit. But I was never in plan to become director of NGI. And that naturally was a big boost for my career. But Kåre Høeg decided to retire at a time where I had been doing 25 years of engineering. So I said, oh, why not? So it's opportunities. And the same thing happened with risk. There was a French company, Total, Elf, then Total. They wanted to introduce risk into the design of piles offshore. They needed somebody who could speak French, who would be willing to live in France for a while. And I thought that was attractive. But I was not married at the time, so no obligations. And speaking French, that was fine. So for me, when I look back, it's a succession of coincidences, opportunities. And, so it went from risk on offshore platforms, on slopes, then risk on dams and tailing dams, tunnels. So it has expanded that way. So it was not planned. It's opportunities.
You took the opportunity. So, but can you remember any specific projects where these methods or probabilistic methods have been critical or made a critical difference in the outcome of the project?
But that's a very good question. I'm happy you asked it because I had forgotten. But I don't know if you remember, but as soon as you became director, I started working for Statoil then, which has changed name since, Equinor. And there was a problem at the platform, 3 platforms, matter of fact, where the calculated pile lengths were over 100 meters. And it's difficult to drive big piles like that. And they asked us to apply probabilistic methods to find what was the real risk of a failure and too high displacements and such. And a long story short, and we've published it, but we save on only one platform $40 million because we could show that the platform had a probability of failure which was much lower than 10⁻⁴, with piles that were shorter. And then we look at the CPTs and something, and it makes a good story, but it was very, probabilistic analysis take a long time to be accepted and all that. And that was when you took over 2013 maybe. So 10 years ago. And that was very good. But the more recent examples, we were looking at the dam. And the interesting, when you do risk assessment for dams, you always discover something. A dam has a long story, and sometimes there's a tunnel that everybody's forgotten about. And we were looking at different rehabilitation. It's a dam that had leakage problems and such. So it needed rehabilitation. The first analysis, no rehabilitation, said you need to do something. So we analyzed 5 different rehabilitation methods or schemes. And the most expensive one was not the one that was reducing the risk the most. And, that's all of a sudden the light comes up. You say, oh, yeah, well, maybe we should look at this other solution. So, that's very rewarding for us who do this analysis. Sometimes they're dry and sometimes people don't believe in it, but sometimes we can show that it's worthwhile.
Another field which has been a major area of focus for you is offshore geotechnics. Could you walk us through one of the most complex challenges you have worked on in this area? Well, I guess there are many, but pick one.
The one about the piles for Equinor was interesting enough, but I went back to this one. I called it CDP1. I was very young. I think it was the first time I was a project manager for NGI. And so it was a 35,000 kroner job, nothing. I just had a week to check the calculations of stability and to allow for the work to go on. They were going to check the stability. And the company who had done that had a factor safety 1.3, which is according to the rules. And I did the calculation, used CAP, used the NGI program. I get 1.0. 1.0. Made a mistake, redid it. And then I run to my supervisor. My boss was Knut Andersen at the time. And I said, I made a mistake. What's wrong? And there was a mistake in the calculation, the consultant. And then that project, it turned out to be a 3 or 4 year project. We had to look into all the measurements that had been made, all the instrumentation, add instrumentation, rerun new CPTs. It became an enormous project. But then I got to see the whole life of a project, from lab tests, in situ testing, and the structural calculations, and the accelerometers and such. And I think it marked me because it was the first time I was exposed to something that was so serious and so grave. And the platform stayed open until 1991. So I guess I worked, it was in 83 or so. And then we had to put a restriction on operating the platform that when the significant wave height would become higher than 7 meters, they had to evacuate because there had been so much erosion and different aspects. And I did not sleep well until 1991.
Did you go yourself offshore for site investigations?
Oh, yes. Oh, many times. And I recommended to younger people. I recommended yesterday, as a matter of fact.
Why? Why do you recommend that?
Just the experience of having to do laboratory tests in this environment, living with the people on the boat who have a slightly different culture than we have, having to make the decision of how far the test will go. And sometimes we had problems and the bit would get caught and then we spent 2 days to remove the bit. It's a lot of immediate decisions that have to be made. You can get experience in the field doing that also, but offshore has a special charm.
Do you get seasick?
As a matter of fact, I'm a person who's, because of low blood pressure, I'm often dizzy. When I'm board in the ship, because of the tremor and everything, my blood pressure goes up. I never feel better than onshore. I've never been sick. So for me, it's a good environment. But I've been offshore 4 times, I think. The last time, I think, was for Troll. Then I guess I became too old or something. I loved it. I loved it.
In your view, what have been the most significant advancements in geotechnics over the last few decades?
Yeah, and maybe you will be surprised, but I've reflected. That's a difficult question, and
there are many.
And it's not a geotechnical feat. I find is the digitalization. I've written IT development, visualization, all of this. I work on Moss now, and we have pictures in 3 dimensions telling us about where the soil is and all the different slopes, and we're analyzing many slopes. And I can see all of that in 3D. When I did my PhD, I draw every single stress-strain curve by hand. and I work with uncertainties. I mean, seeing all those graphics, you still have to have the knowledge to, does the soil parameter, do they make sense and all that? So that's the geotechnical part. But being able, with the touch of a button, of seeing all that for dams, I see all where the tunnels are going and such. For the slopes, we see all the soil properties and all the result of the instrumentation. That has completely transformed at least my everyday. Before I had to read reports after reports and reports. Now, well, I don't do it myself, but somebody push on the button and show me. I think that has revolutionized what we do. There are many other accomplishments, what we're doing with the, well, I never have the right name, but your field manager and everything associated with it. I mean, that's creating an entire new world for us to work in. And we didn't have that 10 years ago. Yeah. 5 years maybe we started, but
now it's been quite development the last
and naturally it requires other skills. I'm not an expert on that, but people help me. But to interpret this, but it solves a problem I have with the spatial variability and where the holes are and how representative is this parameter.
So what do you see then as the future for offshore geotechnics? Especially with the rise of offshore wind farms now being a very large market.
So, and in fact, it's related to what I think is the biggest advancement. Is I am fascinated with the digital twin, machine learning, and for example, for offshore. We can run maybe a limited number of tests on a sand or a clay, and then we can reproduce numerically the testing 1,000 times. So we can accumulate a lot of data, which usually takes us a day or a week to run a triaxial test or a simple shear, and then we can change all the properties and the direction of the particles for sand and such. I am so impressed. I mean, I'm an advocator. We have to still have some lab tests to kind of anchor what material we're working with. But that will open, it's not completely there yet, but that will open a new world. So
there's synthetic CPTs and also discrete element modeling, for example.
And what we're doing with offshore geophysics, we have this, what we call it ground model, where we use all kind of we use the data that exists, the geophysics, and then we put it together, and then we use some statistical method to find machine learning to find what is the best image of what's all around over offshore wind site. I mean, that is just fascinating. So I wish I was 20 years old again.
Yeah, me too. I find it also very interesting. Are there areas where you feel that geotechnical engineering still has untapped potential, or major gaps that you see from your perspective?
Yes, it's not a complaint, but I see that we could. I'm looking forward to the day where interpretation of the different geophysical methods, which has become very good, especially for tailings dam, which I'm working on now. The interpretation could be easier or more conclusive. It's naturally lots of people just use one method. We should use many methods and then interpret them together. Unfortunately, today most people just interpret each of the methods, but then I would like to get more certainty on the type of material or the permeability of the material, and maybe correlate to the soil properties. I know there's lots of work going on, but it's a lot of it is still very research, and the day it will be like the visualization we have now of a soil profile will be a good day, I think. So that's a gap I would like to see. And then the other challenge is what are we going to do with our aging infrastructure? We've had the golden period. We build bridge, we build tunnels, we build dams. And although we don't have statistics to prove that the aging infrastructure may get worse, we see some physical examples of it in many countries. Not so much in Norway, perhaps, but some. But I've seen it a lot in India and other countries. And okay, we do risk analysis and all that, but that's not enough. We have to have a philosophy. When is it time to replace an aging infrastructure? I mean, you replacing a bridge and such. And I feel there's a gap there. We don't have a good method how to establish.
Assess like the lifetime or extend the lifetime.
And to ensure that it's also sustainable and make sure that the new bridge is better than the one before in terms of sustainability and such. So I see that we have a big role to play there, but I perhaps don't see how we have taken that into really advancing the science.
I agree to that. So many times when we do the risk analysis, we do it like one time, and I guess to follow like the lifetime of a structure, you need to have a more dynamic approach to risk and update. And
yeah, but if it's not just risk that comes in, it's looking how the concrete changes, and and we're not very good at in our risk analysis. How do we account for that? The concrete is not as good as it used, so it has some chemical reactions and such. So, but it's it's a new field kind of. I mean, we'd have to write a research proposal and try to find the good actors on this aspect.
Yes, let's do that. Many engineers cite you as a mentor and role model, Suzanne. So what advice would you give to young engineers, especially women entering this field?
I said it doesn't make a difference.
No, forget about being a woman. That's your advice.
But I was so surprised. I don't know when was the first time somebody called me a role model, but I was so surprised that people considered me as a role model because I never thought of it. But I don't know. But I guess I'm trying to think whether I had a role model as a man before as an engineer, but maybe I did not. But if you want to consider me as a role model, I think I would say what I've said it before is when there's an opportunity that comes, seize it. Just take it. Say yes. Don't be afraid. You can always find arguments why you can say no. But it takes a little bit of daring to say yes, that I want to do. And I think, and every time I've seen anybody take a challenge, and sometimes people need to be mentored or such, but it works out fine. When I was director of NGI, I was so impressed. When people got a new challenge, they took it and they solved it. I mean, and that everybody had a special talent for something. I mean, even the position that was the lowest paid, they were necessary for a certain part of the job. And so when there's an opportunity that comes, just try it. You see,
yes.
And then if you don't like it, you can always go back. So, yeah.
That's a good advice. You have been a leader of NGI and you have other leader positions, but so I'm curious of how to find the best talents. How do you recruit them? What do you look after?
I reflected on that, and but my time NGI was smaller. We were maybe 250 or so, and then we had just one company in the United States. So it was easier. I knew everybody. Today NGI is much bigger, so I don't know everybody. But what I was looking, I did not do the interviews myself. But when there were like several candidates, the very top, then I was asked to express an opinion. For me, it was grades. Yeah, they have to be somewhat reasonable, but it was also a bit of the personality, the social engagement. Not necessarily to be on the barricade as such, but you do something else. You're not just an engineering nerd. Maybe that's me.
read some other books than engineering books. Or?
But reads or skates or, or trains children for football or whatever. And then for me, but again, NGI was smaller, is finding out whether this personality was fitting into the NGI culture. We have very talented people at NGI, but they each have their personality and their way of doing things. And so, NGI has never been very snobbish. When I had excellent candidates, but we seemed to me a bit snobbish or such, then they would not come on the top. And I guess that's what, when my leaders came and said what I would like to say, so I would ask something about his or her personality. And so, but like you, I did not approve every single person. I just tried to tell my leaders that's what I would like to see at NGI. So I did not do that much. I chose my leaders. That's what I did. But that they were the same criteria. Yep. If the person did not fit in NGI culture, or a person was a difficult person, he would never make it. Or she would never make it. Yeah.
But you being yourself a very curious person, and I think being curious is very important in work. So how do you find out if a person is curious?
I guess
I think it's necessary to be curious to really develop in
to do research, yes, but maybe not for necessarily all the jobs we have at NGI. But I don't think that was a criteria. But maybe when I was looking at the entire things, not just doing geotechs or geology, but having all the other activities, that's part of being curious. A person who's not curious maybe will not engage too many other activities.
You were also mentioning that you would like to see that they had other interests and
that's
just
right,
single-minded, not being single-minded
but
on
even singing chorus or playing the piano. I mean, it shows that you have, it's not the talent per se, because I'm interested in talent in engineering, but it was to see that they had more interest. In Norwegian we say flere bein å stå på. You have other things you can do. That for me, that was a sign of somebody who would fit in. So
sounds good. So looking at you being a director at NGI over 2 decades, and NGI, we often say like we do research and consulting, or we do research and practical work hand in hand. How did you approach this quite challenging balance of the portfolio of activities and projects at NGI?
Yeah, it's very challenging. In my starting days as director, we were punished by the Research Council of Norway because we were not. The Research Council of Norway wanted to merge several institutes together. And one suggestion is NGI, part of SINTEF or NGI, and the Building Research Institute together with the NORSA. And we firmly believe, we and all the employees, I've never had so much support from the employees as when I made that decision, is we thought we were better standing alone because of reputation, international contacts, and all the other aspects. And so we said no to the merging, and then we were cut in our basic funding. So there was, in my early days, there was never enough research money. So that's when we started investing money from the bank into our research, and then we have to, that would worsen our result because you have to subtract it. And that provided us with some. But what I found out is not our employees are as motivated for research. Some are really top consultants, are really perfect and are good in everything, but they don't really want to do research. Some others are mainly research people, and it was trying to distribute the talents where they were. But after 10 years, we won the Center of Excellence, and then all our problems got solved because we got a lot of research funding for 10 years.
The ICG.
Yeah. So it was much easier, so we had the group working on geohazards with all this money, with partners, universities and such, so that worked out well. And then we could devote all our other research money for the other fields of NGI, and that kept the research people who needed money occupied. So I was lucky that my last 10 years, they were with the Center of Excellence. It solved a lot of problems. But I think it's very important to realize that people excel at consulting, people excel at research, some excel at both, but not everybody wants to do both. So it's finding out who wants to do what and then assigning them to the research projects, I think.
And having them in the same organization and working together, I think they are thriving both.
Yeah, that's right. And the consultant hears what's happening in research and gets motivated by that. And then when he needs, can you do this analysis? And vice versa. When I was doing a lot of research, I had the greatest admiration for Fritz Nowacki, who was doing all this consulting, and he knew so much. So
it's a good mix.
Hand in hand is the only way to go.
Yeah. So maybe a difficult question here. Looking back at your career, what do you hope will be your lasting legacy in geotechnical engineering?
I never thought anybody would talk about a legacy from me. But if you want to have, I would say, nothing is impossible.
That's a good phrase.
And then I have a little pet peeve: remember the history. As you know, we're doing good progress right now, writing a book about NGI story. But I say also the history from the people, Terzaghi and Peck, and all of that should not be forgotten. So I would like to be remembered that I was someone caring about the history of geotechnical engineering.
That's good. So, Suzanne, I know you have a busy calendar. So retirement is not for you, is it?
I don't know. Do you wish me to retire?
No. Not at all.
But I've been retired for 12 years now.
Yeah, in like the word.
On paper, yeah.
On paper.
When you okay.
It's more that it's more like the question is, you like to keep yourself occupied.
No, it's not so much. But when you like what you do, it's easy to do it. And I was 20 years in administration, and that was great. I really enjoyed being director of NGI, but it was probably enough to administer for 20 years. And when I came back to 100%, essentially 99% technical work from 2012 to now, it feels marvelous. It's so nice. I mean, I have nothing against administration and personal leadership and having leader meetings, but I think it's nice to change. And I was in a time at NGI where I could keep up a bit with the technical while being director, so I had not forgotten. So that worked out really well. And when you get to my age, you get a lot of expert jobs and such, and that is very rewarding. You get involved into very important projects, and then you write a report, then it's accepted or not, and then you could. It's a nice part of the geotechnical profession, I think. But usually you have to be a certain age to do that. So, and then I find. I would like to retire and do something else. I have lots of hobbies, which I don't have time to do. Every time there comes a new project, there are a few new projects coming in now. They're so interesting, you can't say no.
Let's hope there comes more of these interesting projects. So, thank you very much, Suzanne, for this personal, very informative and inspiring talk.
You're most welcome.